Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Life Without a Filter. I'm Cheryl, wife, mom to two amazing young adults, and one very spoiled fur baby. If you're new here, this podcast is all about navigating life after public school ends for our kids with disabilities. We'll be talking about services, supports, and the reality of building a meaningful adult life through self-directed programming. Before we go too far into the weeds of our own journey, I thought it would be helpful to take a step back and answer a really important question. What exactly is self-direction? So, in this episode, we are going to have an intro to self-direction and how we got here. So, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Parenting can be hard no matter what age or stage you are in. But what happens when your child becomes an adult and they will need a lifetime of support? I'm your host, Cheryl, and welcome to the podcast, Life Without a Filter. My goal is to share our not so unique, maybe specific journey as a family navigating the various special education transition services and creating our son's self-directed adult program. While we don't have all the answers, our hope is that you can learn from our experiences to make your own path a bit smoother. We'll also have some special guests providing resources and sharing their personal stories of navigating within the adult disability services world. Let's embark on this journey together. So, what is self-direction? Here in Massachusetts, self-direction is a programming model funded through the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS for short. I'm going to be referencing the Choosing an Adult Service Model That is Best for You page on the DDS website, and I'll link it in the show notes so you can take a look at it if you're listening to the podcast. If you're watching this episode here on YouTube, I am going to be opening up the page in a bit. As a reminder, I am from Massachusetts, so while I will be talking specifically about our state, you can visit your own state's DDS website to find information on programming models in your state. Before we jump in, here are the highlights of what self-direction programming is. Self-direction is built on the idea that adults with disabilities, together with their team, get to design a program that's unique to their needs. This all starts with person-centered planning. That means your young adult, with support, creates an individual support plan or ISP, and that plan becomes the foundation for their program. To use self-direction, your child first needs to be found eligible for DDS adult services, usually through something called the Chapter 688 referral process here in Massachusetts. Once eligibility is confirmed, you'll meet with your transition coordinator, who helps walk you through the process of submitting a plan for DDS to review and hopefully approve funding. If you are watching on YouTube, I am now on the DDS website. If you are listening to the podcast, I have provided the link in the show notes. To give the client an overview, this page shows the 3 choices of programming that DDS in Massachusetts offers. The first is the traditional model, which is the one that the majority of clients are participating in and parents are familiar with. Your child attends a structured program, typically 5 days a week, usually from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and they are responsible for everything. What your child does in the program will be dependent on what the program offers and has available for your child. When people ask me what Elle is doing, I usually say that we are doing a self-directed program model. But there are actually 2 different models under self-direction, and this website gives a nice summary of them. The first one is agency with choice. This is what's called a co-employment model. Basically, your family and a support agency work together. You take the lead on planning and managing the day-to-day program, but the agency helps with the big administrative stuff, like hiring staff, processing payroll, and making sure your program follows the rules. Since the agency is technically the employer, they also set the pay rates for your staff. On the other hand, the participant-directed programming puts even more responsibility in the hands of your family. You're not just managing the day to day, you're also in charge of hiring staff, training them, and supervising them. When it comes to the budget, you'll work with a DDS service broker to set it up, and a fiscal intermediary handles the official paperwork like background checks, tax forms, and payroll. The big benefit here, you get to set the pay rate for your staff within your approved budget. The easiest way to think about this is that agency with choice feels a little like partnering with a co-op, while a participant-directed program feels a lot more like running your own business. If you scroll to the bottom of this website, you will see that there are two handouts available that go into more detail about the differences between the two programs. When we were doing our research, I downloaded and saved those handouts in my Next Steps for L folder so that I could easily reference back to them. After attending webinars, working with our transition coordinator, and talking with DDS staff, our family decided that the participant-directed programming model was the best fit. Why? Because our son had very strong opinions about what he wanted, and just as importantly, what he didn't want his days to look like. Over the years, we built strong connections with former staff and community members, so when it was time to launch, we already had people and opportunities in place. Also, after talking to DDS and hearing that many of the agencies at that time were struggling with finding staff, we decided that if I was going to have to find staff, I wanted to set the pay rate. Also, having my own business, I was used to doing payroll and invoices, and while the DDS fiscal intermediary company was not always been smooth sailing, it really is a crucial piece to handling all of the onboarding paperwork and payroll. Don't worry, I will do future episodes on this topic. But let me be real honest here. This model takes a lot of time and planning. The main reason we've been able to do it is because when Liam was transitioning, I was in a position to significantly reduce my work schedule. That did allow me to treat this program like a second job, or honestly, like starting and running a small business. And I do want to acknowledge that not every family has the flexibility to do that. It is a privilege, and I don't take it for granted. And another important thing, I don't want you to think that we just woke up one morning and decided to jump into self-direction. The truth is, the transition process started years before we even knew what self-direction was. For us, it all began when Elle turned 14. That's when transition planning officially kicks in here in Massachusetts, and honestly, it felt overwhelming at first. The transition planning form became part of his IEP, and suddenly we weren't just talking about academics. We were talking about what Elle's future could look like. His vision statement, his goals, his long-term dreams, it all started there. Looking back, those early conversations were the foundation of everything that came later. And to let you know, his vision changed drastically at one point when he pivoted from wanting to attend college to switching to a vocational path. But that is the beauty of transition planning. Because you revisit it every year in the IEP, it allows you to pivot and adjust the goals and benchmarks to reflect the changes in the student's vision statement. So fast forward a bit, and we found ourselves staring at something called the 688 referral form here in Massachusetts. This is a form that has to be submitted about 2 years before your child exits public school. And at the time, I thought, okay, we filled out another form, check off that box. But what I didn't realize was that this was really the gateway to adult services. For us, it meant that Elle was officially being referred to DDS. Of course, that didn't mean we were all set. There was still the actual application process. And yes, even though Elle had been eligible for DDS as a child, we had to go through the whole thing again so he could reapply as an adult. In future episodes, I will go deeper into that application process. Once we got approval from DDS, One of the best decisions we made was to get Elle's DDS transition coordinator involved right away. We made sure they met Elle and started coming to his IEP meetings right away. Having that relationship already in place made those next steps when we were a year out go a lot smoother. During this time, I was also in research mode. Once we knew DDS was going to be his adult service model, I went to every DDS webinar I could find on traditional programming and self-direction. If you remember from my previous episode, we thought that we were going to take that traditional model route for programming. But because of lack of space in the programs Elle wanted to attend, we had to also begin researching self-directed programming in tandem. Those webinars and sessions were eye-opening. I started to see the possibilities. I also learned that while our transition coordinator was helpful, they weren't always familiar with what self-directed programming model was. So I tracked down the self-direction coordinator at our local DDS office, and that person became a key resource for us. Then came the turning point, the person-centered plan. This was where everything started to click. Sitting down as a family and with his school team, really listening to Elle's hopes and preferences and putting them into a plan, it gave us a concrete picture of what his days could look like. It also gave us a tool that we could hand to DDS and say, this is who Elle is, and this is what he wants. Around the same time, we had transition assessments done. The school had already completed some as part of Elle's 3-year reevaluation, but we also went out and had an independent assessment done. That second perspective was so helpful. It gave us new insights and helped shape the goals in Elle's person-centered plan. With all that in hand, we sat down and drafted a version of Elle's program. It wasn't perfect. It was more like a rough sketch, but it showed DDS that we had a vision. When we submitted it to our transition coordinator, it became the official starting point of the self-direction process. From there, things started to move forward. We met with our DDS self-direction coordinator, went through orientation, and finally began the detailed planning process. And that was the moment it started to feel real. So no, we didn't just dive in head first. It was a gradual journey. Lots of forms, meetings, and planning sessions. But every step brought us closer to a program that truly reflects who Elle is and what he wants his adult life to be. So that's a little bit about how we got here and why we ultimately chose participant-directed programming. In future episodes, I'll walk you through how we actually set up and now manage the program, from staffing to budgets to the everyday details. And of course, the bumps in the road too, because there have definitely been a few. If you have specific questions about any part of this process, please send them my way. I love to work them into future episodes so you get the most practical, real-life information possible. Thanks for joining me today. I hope this episode gave you both the big picture of what self-direction is and also a peek at the behind-the-scenes journey that got us to this point. Until next time, remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are resources, there are people, and there's a community here to support you. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. What action steps can you take away from this episode? Share them in the comments section. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe, tell a friend, and leave a review. Until next week, let's continue to support and honor each other on our unique family journeys.